The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow is a point-and-click folk horror game where you play as Thomasina Bateman, a budding archaeologist lured to the countryside to excavate the eponymous Hobbs Barrow in a mysterious letter by a person she's never heard of. The game is available on Steam. Atmosphere.
Excuse me?
The game is set in a town called Bewlay, and really reflects the small country towns of England back in the 1800s, when steam trains were newfangled technology and everybody knew the first name of everyone else who lived there. Being a stranger, however, joining this tiny, close-knit community is strange.
Hello again, Cyril.
Oh, aye.
I take it you are not enamoured with the railway station.
Bewlay's gonna be swarming with outsiders, like you. We don't want you coming here. It's as simple as that, lass.
Why not?
This is our town, our land.
I assure you, I am not here to cause trouble.
We'll see about that, won't we?
The atmosphere shifts and changes, balancing between the charming town Bewlay is on the outside and the strange behaviour of its occupants, which can sometimes be taken as superstitious and xenophobic, but as the game goes on it becomes harder to understand who's difficult by nature or difficult because they know things that you don't, and the paranoia sets in very slowly.
To tell you the truth, Arthur, I've had a somewhat puzzling morning.
Oh?
Someone slipped this journal under the door of my room.
Whose journal is it?
I have no idea. The text refers to some sort of excavation.
Well, Stanley must be playing tricks on you.
He swore his innocence. I thought perhaps you might have done it?
No, it wasn't me. That's for certain. Somehow I have a clear memory of last night.
The layers of facade strip away day by day as your mundane tasks end up revealing more about the quiet town of Bewlay before you even reach the Barrow.
Yes, this shall make a fine entry for my book. What secrets do you conceal, I wonder?
Each unnatural event leaves a mark that isn't so easily forgotten as you awaken the next day and try to figure out what's really going on here. The game changes radically by the time the actual archaeology begins, and the endgame feels like a train you can't get off of, and really, maybe you should have boarded the train out of Bewlay.
What did Samuel find in the Barrow?
I don't know, but something went wrong. Afterward, he could barely speak. You couldn't make out a word, like.
That must have been hard.
Overall, the atmosphere is full of paranoia and distrust that escalates very slowly and steadily as the game goes on. It's naturally a slow-paced game as a point-and-click adventure, but it does work out in the end. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. Being a point-and-click game mostly focused on puzzles, the scary moments of the game are extremely few and far between, but this comes at the exchange of a lot of unpleasant concepts and creeping
Jane,
dread.
come out at once.
The game's scary moments are often shocking and jarring cutscenes, with implications that lurk on for longer than the cutscenes last. What's seen can't be unseen.
Goodness me! Jane!
Silly, what are you doing in that smelly old badger's hole?
And several of them aren't really addressed or explained later on, leaving you wondering what you saw or what to be afraid of. Thomasina's bewildering nightmares of foreboding, but not always explained. There's only one or two moments outside of cutscenes that are potentially frightening, and it's mostly down to your investment in the story. The late game is really where most of it culminates as you explore the Barrow, but even then, it never really goes beyond the concepts of horror that it dabbles in. It's unsettling and some things leave an impact, but they're not always scary. That's still one Harry Mason. Sound design. A charming and relaxing hazy synth rolls over the town of Bewlay like soft fluffy clouds that slink between the character dialogue and the sound of the wind and trees. There's a very earthy sound to the game, natural, but as the game goes on, even the wind starts to sound more unpleasant, its tone changing. The music is very understated, the bare minimum of a soundtrack, always accompanying the game, but very rarely taking center stage, though when it does, it's in more emotional moments, being these dramatic chilling strings, or violins that escalate the hopelessness of some situations. The ambiance is pretty great too, with each area feeling different and brought alive through its various sound effects or rumbling tones, wind and rain effects. The sound effects are also really understated, though realistic and immersive enough to never really be suspicious or jarring.
Hello. Good day. Would you like to buy one of these cakes, pet?
What kind of cakes do you have?
I have some lovely Bakewell puddings. The sweetest marriage of almond and jam.
The voice acting is really great. Loads of characters like Arthur Tillett and Lord Panswick sell their roles really well. A minor complaint is that the game doesn't use reverb at all. Even cavernous rooms don't reflect the way they are in sound, which didn't really take me out of the moment at the time, so it probably won't affect the average player. There's a little directional audio, but there's not much of it, but for a point-and-click game, this is hardly something that'll affect the experience. Though there are some minor flaws, the sound design still works fine. That's 2 Harry Masons.
I must push forward.
Gore. The game's gore comes quite surprisingly, and thanks to the pixel art, it's obscured enough so that you never see the full extent. But you don't really need to, the impact is there. There's only a few gross things that happen in the game, but they're impossible to ignore or forget. It's out of place in a way that does wonders for the game, derailing your train of thought each time that it occurs. That's 3 Harry Masons.
Dearest Mother, I hope this letter will reach you.
Story. Thomasina Bateman, an aspiring archaeologist, is drawn to the town of Bewlay by a letter from a mysterious man named Leonard Shoulder. Upon arrival, he's not there, and people are evasive to even talk about the Barrow that she's here to investigate. The story really is the highlight of the game, drawing you in with the dialogue between Thomasina and the characters, which are all really well written. Her inquisitive nature, backed by her family history of science and discovery, butting heads with the simple, religious and superstitious townfolk of Bewlay. But the ongoing mystery of what's really wrong with Hobbs Barrow is shattered by a dream and some confounding events that keep drawing a darker and darker shadow over the place she plans to visit. You get some glimpses into Thomasina's sad backstory and tragic past that are recounted at random points throughout the game, which fleshes out her character substantially. The game's story is told almost entirely by dialogue, whether it's dialogue Thomasina has with others or dialogue she has with herself, recapping events or things that happen off-screen. There's some diary entries which play into solving puzzles as well, and they're intriguing and become more and more laden with hints and warnings as the game goes on. And there's dialogue choices. Where the story stumbles, though, is in the dialogue choices. There's only one ending, which is still a fantastic revelation that eclipses the horror of the game that led up to it perfectly, but the dialogue options led you to believe that choosing different things will affect the story in some meaningful way. The endgame is a roller coaster that you are not permitted to leave, which, based on your perspective, is either very limiting or perfectly encapsulates the mentality of the character you play as. Really though, regardless, the destination is worth the journey. making the final score 4 out of 5 Harry Masons. As a fan of point-and-click adventure games, I found Excavation of Hobbs Barrow to not really be what I expected, but actually to be far better, and I think it's a serious contender for one of the best folk horror games out there. Again, I'd like to remind you the whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I excavated Hobbs Barrow, I tried not to let them win, and I advise you don't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.